Hello everyone, this is Miss Soto. In this video, we are going to quickly go over the concept of continental drift, and we are going to include the theory behind continental drift and the movements of continental drift. So first we will start with the theory, which is in the bottom of these boxes. They're all connected to this box, which is titled Theory Evidence. And this evidence was first thought of a person called Alfred Wegener. He had 5 key components in which he argued that the continents used to be one giant continent called Pangea. One piece of his theory was that the continents as they are now fit like a puzzle piece. Many of the continent edges, if you were to slide them next to each other, would look like they fit. However, they do not look like they fit perfectly, and this is due to ages and decades of weathering, erosion, and deposition, which has changed the coastline of many of these continents. Another piece of evidence was glacier etchings. So basically, this is where they have found glacier marks in areas that are not even remotely cold. So they have found them in places like Africa, where we all know does not support ice or snow. And this is basically him stating that at once the places where these glacier etchings were found had to have been in a much colder climate, which could support ice and snow and freezing temperatures. The third piece of evidence is fossil evidence. This is backing the fact that fossils of the same species of plants and animals have been found on different continents, yet there's no way to say how the same species ended up on vastly huge differences of distance, because there's no way animals or plants could have somehow swam. So this is saying that at one point the land pieces were together, and when they divided, the fossils and animals got separated. Another evidence that is similar is the rock and geological structures. So there are mountain ranges and other geological structures that are very similar on different continents that look like at one point they are maybe connected. They have also taken soil samples and rock samples and have noticed that some of these samples on different continents are the exact same, which states at one point that these pieces of land were together. And they're at the same spot, and when they broke apart, of course, it created a line, even though they're the same. The last piece of evidence is coal deposits. So coal is created from dead plants and animals that is under the earth, and we know that these animals had to have been deceased, and plants had to have been deceased for a very long time before they turn into coal. And they found coal deposits in Antarctica, which we know in this day and age is so cold it supports hardly any life. So with these coal deposits, at one point Antarctica had to have been warmer, or at least the land that is now Antarctica has a warmer climate, or had a warmer climate, that did support enough plants and animals to create these huge coal deposits underneath the earth. So, how did these continents spread? And how are they shifting and changing over the earth? That's what the top part of this mind map is. So there are 3 types of earth boundaries. There are convergent, divergent, and transform. Each of these boxes goes to their own movements and landforms. So we will first start at convergent. Convergent boundaries collide, meaning this is when 2 plate tectonics run into each other and create certain landform. So the earth is colliding at this point. When the earth collides, it creates mountains, trenches, and volcanoes. Now there is a little saying to help you remember the landforms that convergent boundaries do. This little trick is country music television. And as you can see, I have underlined the first letters in the words and then left TV by itself. So you can think of it this way. Convergent starts with a C. The M stands for mountain. The T stands for trench. And the V stands for volcano. So country music television means convergent, mountain, trench, volcano. That's a little trick to try and remember the plate boundary with its land formations. The next boundary we have is divergent. This means that the plate boundaries are moving away from each other, so they are dividing. Divergent starts with DI, and so does divide. Divergent boundaries produce certain landforms, which are mid-ocean ridges and rift valleys. Divergent also has a silly saying to help you remember the type of plate boundary and the things that it produces. Dirty-minded rap stands for divergent, which creates mid-ocean ridges and rift valleys. One thing to remember though, and not get it confused with mountains, is that minded starts with MI and mid-ocean ridge starts with MI. Dirty-minded rap. Divergent, mid-ocean ridge, rift valley. The last plate tectonic movement is transform. This is where 2 plate boundaries slide past each other. So a way to remember transform goes with slide is that transform has an S in it. And of course, slide starts with S. Now at transform boundaries, where they slide, that is called a fault or a fault line. Now with the sliding and the friction of the earth moving back and forth up against each other creates earthquakes. So this saying is truly funky electric. The T stands for transform. The F stands for fault. and the E stands for earthquake. So at transform boundaries are fault lines, and those create earthquakes. I really hope this helps, and you remember these silly little sayings when it comes to the landforms.